Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide, the murder of Annie Law. Today, we're diving deep into a case that's truly chilling. It's less like a straightforward crime, um, and more like a calculated violation of what should have been an impenetrable space. We're talking about the disappearance and ultimately the murder of Annie Law. She was this brilliant, incredibly promising Yale doctoral student, and the timing, just gut-wrenching. She was literally 5 days away from her wedding day. Instead of walking down the aisle, she vanished. And where her body was eventually found, deep inside a high-security, state-of-the-art animal research facility at Yale, a place designed to keep things out, not trap a killer in.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, our foundation is the investigation itself. We're working directly from the source materials, the detailed search warrants, the police affidavits, the court documents. These aren't just summaries. They contain, the chilling specifics. Keycard data logs, forensic findings, step-by-step police procedures. What we're doing here is reconstructing that timeline, piece by meticulous piece. It relied so heavily, not on eyewitness accounts, which were basically non-existent for the crucial moments, but on electronic footprints.
Right, the data trails.
Data trails, forensic residue,
Yeah.
and the almost panic actions of someone desperately trying to cover their tracks in a place they thought was secure.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack the forensic battle that took place within those walls, within 10 Amistad Street. We're going to trace that shocking trail of DNA, look closely at the suspicious behaviors, the digital breadcrumbs, everything that shifted this from a missing person case.
A very high-profile missing person case.
Yes, a frantic search into a murder charge against someone who was hiding right there in plain sight. Let's get into this deeply unsettling story. Okay, so to really understand the weight of this loss, we need to start with Annie Law herself. She wasn't just any student. 24 years old, a doctoral candidate in pharmacology at Yale, expected to get her PhD in 2013. She was on track for, well, a significant career in medical research, a real star.
And her background really underscores that. She grew up in Placerville, California, high school valedictorian. Her classmates actually voted her the next Einstein. That tells you something, right?
Wow, the next Einstein.
Yeah. And she clearly had the intellect and the drive. She'd won a major scholarship to the University of Rochester before even getting to Yale. She was, operating at a very high level academically.
And personally, things seemed just as bright. Engaged to Jonathan Wodowski, he was a graduate student at Columbia, and the sources, they really emphasized the timeline pressure because their wedding was set for Sunday, September 13th, 2009.
That date hangs over the entire initial investigation.
You can only imagine the agony for her family, her fiancé, watching those days tick by, knowing that date was approaching. It must have been unbearable.
And there's this layer of, incredibly dark irony here. Annie Lee was actually quite safety conscious.
Really?
Yes. Just months before, in February 2009, she'd written an article for Yale Medical School's own magazine, B Magazine. The title, Crime and Safety in New Haven.
No way.
Yes. She was advising colleagues, use safety escorts, be aware of your surroundings, standard advice, but...
She was preaching caution, and the danger wasn't outside the gates. It was right there with her.
Exactly. It came from inside the secure walls of her workplace.
So let's walk through the timeline of her last known movements. Tuesday, September 8th, 2009. The details are tracked almost minute by minute in the reports.
She leaves her apartment in the morning, takes the Yale Transit shuttle, standard routine, arrives at Sterling Hall of Medicine. And here's a crucial detail the investigators noted immediately. She left her purse, her cell phone, her credit cards, her cash, all of it, back in her office at Sterling Hall.
Okay, that's significant. What does that suggest to you?
It strongly suggests she wasn't planning a long day at the Amistad Street building, maybe just popping over for an hour or two, perhaps, to check on an experiment.
Right, not like settling in for a full day of lab work.
Precisely. It points to a quick, intended visit. Around 10 a.m., she walks from Sterling Hall over to 10 Amistad Street, this 5-story brick research building.
And we know for sure she went inside.
Yes. Surveillance footage confirms it. She swipes her Yale ID card. The door unlocks. She enters 10 Amistad Street just after 10 a.m.
Okay, so that's the last confirmed sighting, the last moment of certainty.
And here's the fact that immediately locked down the investigation, the really chilling part. The extensive video surveillance system, covering entrances and exits, confirmed Annie Law was never seen leaving that building.
Never.
Never seen exiting after that 10 a.m. entry. The system was designed to catch every in and out. It showed her go in, did not show her come out.
So by 9 p.m. that night, she hadn't come home. She'd missed a pre-wedding appointment. Her housemate, Natalie Powers, officially reports her missing.
And the response was immediate and massive. Because of that video evidence, the certainty she was still inside this secure facility, the investigation became incredibly focused, incredibly intense, right from the start.
That must have been a terrifying realization for the authorities. You have the FBI involved, New Haven Police, Connecticut State Police, all converging on this building.
They knew she had to be in there, or possibly her body had been removed in some way that bypassed the main cameras, which seemed unlikely given the setup.
Did they consider other possibilities initially, like waste disposal?
They did. They took some pretty aggressive steps early on. They actually searched the garbage incinerator plant in Hartford where Yale sends its waste, including scientific waste, looking for any clue, any trace.
But ultimately, that missing exit footage was the key.
It was the anchor point. It forced them to shut down the entire building at 10 Amistad Street. It wasn't just a potential crime scene area. The whole functioning, multi-million-dollar research lab became a sealed investigation zone.
Turning a lab into a fortress under scrutiny.
Exactly. And understanding the building itself is key to understanding the crime. 10 Amistad Street wasn't just, a campus dorm or library. It was a highly specialized research facility. The security was intense, primarily designed to protect the research, expensive equipment, sensitive experiments, valuable lab animals, proprietary data.
Less about personal safety, more about protecting the science.
In effect, yes. Access wasn't casual. Main entrances and, crucially, individual labs and rooms inside required swiping a valid Yale ID keycard. No swipe, no entry.
And cameras everywhere.
Everywhere. About 75 security cameras monitoring the place. It was wired.
So, with that level of security, 75 cameras, keycard access everywhere.
It meant the investigators knew almost immediately the perpetrator had to be an insider.
Yeah.
Someone with legitimate access.
Right. Getting into the basement, especially, where her body was eventually found, without authorization, that would have been extremely difficult. It would likely trigger alarms, require special codes.
Absolutely. So the pool of potential suspects narrowed dramatically right away. Yale employees, maybe students with specific clearance, authorized technicians working in that building.
And Annie Lee's own research was based in that basement level, wasn't it?
Yes, that's where the animal housing and experimental rooms she used were located. Her primary assigned workspace was room G13.
But the investigation spread beyond just G13.
It did, pretty quickly. As they started tracking movements and finding forensic evidence, other adjacent rooms became critical to the timeline, particularly rooms G22, G24, G25, G27, and G29. These were rooms associated with the suspect's work duties.
Which brings us to him.
Which brings us to Raymond John Clark III, white male, born January 1985, so he was 24 at the time, same age as Annie. He worked there as an animal technician III. He wasn't new. He'd been employed at the facility for 5 years. He knew that building inside and out.
Knew the layout, knew the procedures, maybe knew the security blind spots too.
Potentially. He certainly had extensive familiarity. And his specific assignment on September 8th, the day Annie disappeared.
Let me guess, it involved those basement rooms.
Precisely. His official task sheet for that day included maintaining animals in rooms G13, Annie's main room, G24, and G33. He had legitimate, authorized access to the very area where she worked and vanished.
So when investigators first talked to him, how did he present himself?
Very carefully. Early interviews, he told FBI agents he'd known Annie Lee, but only for about 4 months. He made a point of saying they didn't socialize outside of work.
Trying to minimize the connection.
Exactly. Painting himself as just another colleague, purely professional. But as the investigation started digging into the building's data logs, the keycard swipes, his story started to unravel. His detailed knowledge of the facility, initially just part of his job description, quickly started looking like a major liability for him.
The search was intense, lasted almost a week, and then came Sunday, September 13th, 2009.
The day she was supposed to get married.
Finding her on her wedding day, it's just an unbearable layer of tragedy on top of everything else.
It really is. On that Sunday, investigators were doing another sweep, a very meticulous search of the basement, specifically a lower-level locker room area. And they encountered something unmistakable. The reports used chillingly similar language. A strong odor, similar to that of a decomposing body.
Oh, God, they knew.
They brought in the cadaver canines, the dogs trained to detect human remains. And the dogs immediately alerted, confirming the presence of decomposition.
Where exactly was she? It wasn't just out in the open, was it?
No, not at all. She was concealed, hidden within a wall, specifically behind a toilet fixture in this basement locker room, there was a mechanical chase, basically, a service space for pipes and wiring.
Hidden behind an access panel.
Exactly. Someone had removed the panel, placed her body inside, and then likely replaced the panel. This wasn't a random hiding spot. It required knowledge of the building's structure.
That points directly back to an insider, someone familiar with those hidden spaces.
Absolutely. And the scene itself, when they accessed the space, was grim. Her body was positioned upside down, partially decomposed due to the time-elapsed 5 days, and the likely warm, humid conditions within that wall cavity.
And the autopsy, what did that confirm?
It provided the hard, undeniable medical facts. Cause of death, traumatic asphyxia due to neck compression. She was strangled.
Strangled. Was there evidence of a struggle?
Yes, significant evidence. The medical examiners found she had a broken jaw and a broken collarbone. And critically, they determined these injuries were sustained while she was still alive. This wasn't quick. It points to a violent physical confrontation.
Happening inside this supposedly secure lab building. The mind reels.
It does. And the physical evidence found with and around her body strongly suggested a sexual motivation or component to the attack.
How so?
Her bra had been pushed up towards her head. Her panties were found pulled down around her ankles.
Okay. And forensic evidence.
Seminal fluid was found on her panty liner. Now, the reports state that particular sample was too small at the time for a definitive DNA match.
But there was other evidence.
Yes. Critically, other seminal fluid traces and biological evidence were recovered from the scene, and later testing on those did yield a full DNA profile.
Which matched Raymond Clark.
Which matched Raymond John Clark III.
Were there other small, maybe overlooked details found with her?
2 details stood out immediately to the forensic teams. First, she was wearing surgical gloves, which makes sense for lab work. But oddly, her left thumb was exposed. The glove was torn or pulled back there.
Maybe during a struggle.
Possibly. Or maybe related to the second detail. A tiny, round, reddish-colored necklace bead was found amongst her clothing in the wall cavity.
Oh.
Just a single bead. But it became incredibly significant later when investigators were processing room G22, one of the rooms Clark accessed frequently that day. They found similar, matching beads there.
Connecting that room to her, or at least to the struggle.
Exactly. It suggested maybe something she was wearing broke, or perhaps it was part of some lab equipment that got scattered during the assault and ended up in both locations. A tiny but crucial link.
So, the body is found, murder is confirmed. The focus must have shifted entirely to the internal investigation. Who had access? Whose behavior was off?
Completely. And the first really significant flag regarding suspicious behavior actually came before the body was found. On Thursday, September 10th, 2 days after she vanished.
What happened?
A graduate student, Rachel Roth, felt uneasy about something she saw. She approached a Yale police officer, Sabrina Wood. Roth pointed at a steel pushcart parked right outside room G13. Remember, that was Annie's main lab space. On the cart was a box of disposable wipe balls. Roth noticed what looked like blood spatter on the side of the box.
All the spatter. Okay.
Officer Wood immediately recognized this could be critical. She secured the area around the cart and called for FBI forensic agents to come process it properly.
And this is where Clark comes back into the picture.
This is where Clark's actions become incredibly suspicious. While Officer Wood is standing there, waiting for the FBI, Raymond Clark starts making multiple trips in and out of room G13, acting fidgety. Then he walks over to the cart, he looks at the box, and then the officer's watching this. He physically repositions himself between Officer Wood and the cart and deliberately turns the box of wipes around.
Turning the blood spatter away from her view.
Exactly. A clear, conscious attempt to conceal potential evidence from the police officer standing right there.
That's incredibly brazen. And stupid, frankly.
Well, panic makes people do irrational things. But his actions didn't stop there. After the FBI agents arrived, spoke briefly with him, and left that immediate area, Clark came back later that same day, and he started cleaning, aggressively.
Cleaning what?
The floor drain and the sink inside room G13. He was using SOS pads, cleaning solutions, scrubbing frantically. Multiple officers observed this and noted it in their reports as highly unusual. They specifically stated the drain did not appear dirty or in need of such vigorous cleaning.
He was trying to destroy evidence. Scrubbing the crime scene.
That's exactly what it looked like. He was trying to sanitize the area where the interaction likely began. And their suspicions were later confirmed.
How?
Forensic chemical testing, using things like luminol, revealed blood-like stains and even spray patterns on the walls of both G13 and G22, one of the other rooms he frequented. Stains that someone had clearly tried to wipe or scrub away.
So the cleaning was real and necessary from his perspective.
Yes. Presumptive tests showed the residue was human blood. He'd made a mess and then attempted a panicked, incomplete cleanup.
Did he try to create an alibi, too?
He did. Also on September 10th, in an interview with another officer, Jennifer Garcia, Clark volunteered information, unprompted. He claimed he'd seen Annie Lee leave the building around 12:30 p.m. on the day she disappeared.
But the video.
Exactly. The video surveillance was ironclad. It showed she never exited. So why offer this specific, easily disproven time unless you're trying to plant a false narrative?
It's a classic liar's mistake, offering too much detail.
It screamed deception. And there was something else the officers noticed during these early interactions. Physical marks.
Scratches?
Noticeable scratches, yes.
Hmm.
One on his face and another on his left bicep. When they asked him about these, he gave the oldest excuse in the book.
Let me guess. The cat did it.
Bingo. Claimed he got them at home playing with one of his cats. The investigators noted the injuries looked more like defensive scratches. They didn't buy the cat story for a second.
Okay, so you have suspicious behavior, attempts to conceal evidence, a bogus alibi, physical marks, but the real nail in the coffin seems to be the digital evidence.
Oh, absolutely. Let's spend some real time on this keycard data. Because this, more than anything, provides the silent, objective timeline that convicted him.
They compared his normal patterns to that day.
With incredible precision, they pulled his entire keycard access history for the weeks leading up to September 8th and compared it line by line to his activity on September 8th. The difference is stark.
Okay, what was his normal pattern like for those key rooms, G13 and G22?
All right, let's look at the baseline. In the period from August 27th to September 7th, almost 2 weeks, Clark used his keycard to get into room G22, the one where they later found clean bloodstains, only 3 times total.
3 times in 2 weeks. Okay.
In room G13, Annie's main room, he accessed that 7 times in the same period. It shows a very limited task-specific pattern of movement, professional routine.
Now, September 8th, the day she disappeared.
The pattern explodes. On that single day, Clark used his keycard to access room G22 11 times.
11 times, compared to 3 in the previous 2 weeks.
Exactly. And he accessed G13 5 times that day. This isn't just a slightly busier workload. This is frantic, repetitive movement between these 2 specific adjacent rooms that suddenly became ground zero for the investigation.
It screams agitation, panic, maybe moving things, cleaning things.
Something was clearly happening that required constant re-entry into those specific spaces. The records show he swiped his card to move between various basement rooms a total of 55 times just between 10:40 a.m. and 3:45 p.m. that day.
55 swipes in about 5 hours. That's constant motion.
It's highly abnormal activity. But the most damning piece of keycard data relates to the moments right after Annie Lowe entered the building.
She swiped in just after 10 a.m.
Correct. The records show that after Annie Lowe swiped into the building, Raymond Clark's keycard was the only one used to access room G22 again, the room with the clean bloodstains for the rest of that crucial period. No one else entered G22 with a keycard after her initial entry until long after the likely time frame of the attack.
So he had sole access to that room during the critical window.
Sole recorded access, yes. And even more significantly, his card was recorded swiping back into room G13 at 10:40.59 a.m.
Okay.
After that 10:40 swipe into G13, his keycard does not appear swiping out of G13 or swiping into any other location in the entire building for the next 46 minutes.
46 minutes, a digital black hole right after he enters her primary lab space.
Exactly. That 46-minute gap, where his card isn't used anywhere else, strongly suggests he was occupied within that G13, G22 area during the most probable time frame of the assault and initial cleanup. The keycard data didn't just put him nearby. It documented this period of intense, abnormal activity and then this significant block of time unaccounted for by swipes elsewhere.
The digital wall's closing in.
Precisely.
So by September 12th, even before they find Annie's body, crime scene investigators are already working in the basement, right? Based on the suspicious activity and maybe initial findings.
Yes, the Western District Major Crime Squad was already down there, likely flagged areas like G13 and G22 based on Clark's behavior and maybe preliminary tests. Once the body was recovered on the 13th, the forensic effort went into overdrive. They needed every piece of physical trace evidence Clark might have left or tried to get rid of.
And they found quite a bit, didn't they?
They did. The list of recovered items paints a disturbing picture of the crime and the attempted cleanup. They found a discarded rubber glove again, suggesting cleanup. And really tellingly, hidden up in a ceiling tile near the area, They found a single, low-cut white athletic sock.
Hidden in the ceiling.
Yes, desperate concealment. And that sock had visible hair and blood-like stains on it. It became a crucial piece of evidence.
What else?
They found a pair of Vikings brand work boots, the kind technicians wore. These boots were actually labeled Ray C.
His boots?
Almost certainly. And interestingly, the boots were missing their shoelaces.
Missing shoelaces. Why is that significant?
Investigators often look at missing laces in strangulation cases. Sometimes they're removed to be used as a ligature, or perhaps they were just removed and discarded because they were heavily soiled with evidence. It's another red flag.
Okay. Any clothing?
Yes. A blue short-sleeved hospital scrub top was also seized from the basement area. This matched descriptions and potentially surveillance images of what Clark was wearing earlier that day.
And the chemical tests in the rooms confirmed the cleaning attempts.
Absolutely. As we mentioned, the tests in G13 and G22 showed clear evidence of cleaned-up blood stains and spatter patterns on the walls. Physical proof backing up the officer's observations of his frantic scrubbing.
But was there one piece of evidence, like the absolute undeniable link, the smoking gun?
There really was. It seems almost mundane, but it was devastating forensically. It was a pen, a simple green-inked pen.
A pen? Where was it found?
It was found underneath Annie Lee's body when they recovered her from the wall cavity.
Under her body. Covered in?
Covered in blood. DNA analysis confirmed the blood on the pen belonged to Annie Lee.
Okay, victim's blood. But the link to Clark?
Clark's DNA was found on the pen cap and on the barrel of the pen itself.
His DNA on the pen, her blood on the pen, found under her body.
And it gets even more specific. Investigators were able to determine that this exact pen was the one Clark had used earlier that morning to sign his routine timesheets and task logs.
He signed his timesheet with the murder weapon, essentially. Or at least the pen that ended up at the heart of the crime scene.
It appears so. That single object carrying her blood, his DNA, found directly with her body and linked to his own documented activity that morning, it's about as close to incontrovertible physical proof as you can get.
Just devastating evidence. Was there anything else linking his DNA?
Yes. Remember that scrub top found elsewhere in the lab? Initial testing showed Annie Lee's DNA on it, plus DNA from an unknown male. Once they had Clark's reference sample, they confirmed. He was a previously unknown male. His DNA was on that scrub top along with hers.
So the forensic evidence was just piling up piece by piece.
Overwhelmingly. The keycard data pointed to him, his behavior was suspicious, the physical evidence from the cleaning attempts, the sock in the ceiling, the boots, the pen, the DNA matches, it all converged on Raymond Clark.
Which leads inevitably to the DNA warrant.
Correct. On September 15th, based on all this accumulating evidence, investigators secured warrants to compel Clark to provide samples. Saliva, hair, fingerprints, the works.
And the results.
Immediate and definitive confirmation. Clark's DNA profile was a perfect match for the unknown male DNA found on multiple pieces of critical evidence from the basement. That sock from the ceiling tile, it contained a mixture of DNA Annie Lee's profile and Raymond Clark's profile. There was simply no explaining it away.
The net had closed. Completely.
Completely. 2 days later, September 17th, Raymond Clark III was arrested. They picked him up in a motel in Cromwell, Connecticut.
Did the investigation stop there? What about his home?
No, it expanded. Search warrants were executed for his apartment, 40 Ferry Street in Middletown, Connecticut. They needed to see if he'd taken anything or if there was evidence there related to planning or the aftermath.
What did they find at his apartment? Anything significant?
They seized a range of items. Computers, external hard drives, standard procedure, looking for digital evidence, searches, communications. They took clothing items like scrub tops, work boots, jeans, potentially for trace evidence comparison.
This car, too?
Yes. They seized his red Ford Taurus, which witnesses or surveillance might have placed near the Amistad building around the time.
But was there anything personal, something linking him directly back to Annie?
There was. One item seized from his apartment stands out as particularly disturbing and personal. It was a brown, leather-bound computation notebook.
Okay.
It belonged to Annie Lee.
He had her research notebook in his apartment.
Yes. The reports note she habitually used this specific notebook to record her experimental data, finding her private research log in his possession days after her murder. It's deeply unsettling.
Why would he take that? What does that imply?
Well, several possibilities. Maybe he thought it contained evidence placing her in the lab at a specific time he wanted to obscure. Or, more chillingly, it could have been taken as a trophy.
A trophy.
Yeah, sometimes perpetrators take personal items belonging to the victim. It can be about maintaining a sense of power or control, even after the crime. Taking something so tied to her professional identity. It's a violation on another level. Also found in his apartment, small reddish necklace beads, similar in appearance to the single bead found with Annie's clothing in the wall cavity.
Connecting his home directly back to that tiny piece of evidence from the crime scene, it just keeps tightening.
Every piece of evidence seemed to lock him in further.
So, with this mountain of forensic evidence, the keycard data, the suspicious actions, it seems like an open and shut case. But he initially pleaded not guilty.
He did. In January 2010, he pleaded not guilty to both murder and felony murder. Felony murder means a death occurred during the commission of another felony, like the attempted sexual assault. This initial plea set the stage for what could have been a long, very public, and potentially gruesome trial.
But the trial never actually happened.
That's right. Over a year later, on March 17, 2011, Clark changed his plea. He accepted a deal offered by the prosecution. He pleaded guilty to the primary charge of murder. But for the charge of attempted sexual assault, he entered something different. An Alford plea.
An Alford plea. Can you explain that for listeners? How is that different from a standard guilty plea?
Sure, the Alford plea is a bit unusual, but strategically useful sometimes. Basically, under an Alford plea, the defendant doesn't actually admit guilt to this specific charge. They don't say, I did it. Yeah. Instead, they formally concede that the prosecution has enough evidence that, if presented at trial, would likely result in a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. So they maintain their personal claim of innocence on that charge, but acknowledge the strength of the state's case.
So, for the attempted sexual assault charge, Clark basically said, you'd probably convict me, but I'm not admitting I did it.
Essentially, yes. It allowed him to avoid formally admitting to the sexual nature of the attack, which the evidence strongly pointed towards the state of her clothing, the semen evidence.
Why would the prosecution agree to that?
Plea bargains are complex. For the prosecution, it guaranteed a conviction on both counts, without the risks, costs, and emotional toll of a full trial, especially one involving such sensitive details. It secured a definite outcome. For Clark, it likely led to a more predictable sentence.
What was the sentence under the plea deal?
He was facing a potential sentence anywhere from 25 years up to 80 years. The plea agreement locked in a sentence of 44 years imprisonment. And at that time in Connecticut, murder convictions generally meant serving the full sentence. Parole wasn't typically an option for murder.
So 44 years, day for day.
That was the expectation. Now, there have been some changes in Connecticut law since then regarding parole eligibility for youthful offenders, people convicted for crimes committed when they were under 25. Clark was 24.
So he might get out earlier.
It's possible he could become eligible for a parole hearing after serving 60% of his sentence, which would be about 26.4 years. But it's not guaranteed parole, just eligibility. His scheduled release date without parole is September 16, 2053. He'd be around 70 years old.
He traded the uncertainty of a trial and a potential life sentence for a guaranteed, very long but finite term.
That seems to be the calculation, yes.
And throughout all this, did Clark ever offer a reason, a motive?
No explicit motive was ever stated by him. The Alford plea on attempted sexual assault strongly suggests the context, the driving force behind the confrontation. But Clark himself never provided an explanation. Yale administrators early on tried to frame it simply as workplace violence.
Which feels inadequate, sanitized.
Many felt so, yes. It seemed to downplay the likely sexual aggression and the extreme personal violation involved. It felt like an institutional attempt to manage the narrative.
What about remorse? Did he express any at sentencing?
At the sentencing hearing in June 2011, he did make a brief statement. He said, quote, "I am truly, truly sorry for taking Annie's life." But his defense lawyer also emphasized that the plea was a pragmatic decision, suggesting they believed a trial would have resulted in an even harsher outcome for Clark.
How did his family react? And hers?
It was incredibly difficult all around. Clark's family, including his father, expressed deep sorrow and shock, saying things like, "This is not the Ray we know."
Disturbingly, Clark's fiancée, who apparently still worked at Yale, attended the court proceedings, supporting him despite the horrific details revealed.
Wow. And Annie's family.
Their pain was palpable. Annie Lee's mother, Vivian Lee, addressed Clark directly in her victim impact statement. She said, "You took away my only daughter. Society has lost a beautiful woman." It was heartbreaking. Her uncle, Tuyet Bowie, voiced the family's frustration with the 44-year sentence. He stated frankly he wished Clark had received a death sentence, or at least life without parole given the brutality.
Did they pursue action against Yale?
They explored the possibility of a civil lawsuit against the university, looking into whether security measures were inadequate or if there was institutional negligence that created an environment where this could happen. It's unclear if that suit ever fully materialized, but the consideration was there.
The pressure on Yale must have been immense. How did the university respond institutionally? They had to respond. Yale's president at the time, Richard Levin, announced several safety enhancements. They specifically mentioned strengthening background checks, particularly for contract or temporary employees like Clark had initially been. They also talked about improving emergency communication systems, especially in isolated parts of campus like research labs. It was a clear effort to address the perception and perhaps the reality of security gaps.
And the media coverage, it was huge, wasn't it?
Absolutely massive, intense, frenetic media coverage, as some described it. This case really ignited a debate about media focus, particularly the phenomenon sometimes called missing white woman syndrome, but also the specific attention given to crimes occurring at elite institutions.
The Ivy League factor.
Yes. Jack Schaefer, writing for Slate at the time, rather cynically summed up the perceived media calculation with the line, 3 murders at a Midwestern college equal 1 murder at Harvard or Yale.
Harsh, but maybe highlights a real disparity in coverage.
It certainly sparked that conversation. The combination of the victim's profile, young, brilliant, about to be married, the shocking setting within a secure Yale lab, and the mystery surrounding the disappearance created a media firestorm.
So, reflecting on this whole investigation, what's the final takeaway? What does this case ultimately teach us?
For me, the most chilling lesson here is about the limits of preventative security versus the power of forensic investigation after the fact. You had this high-tech fortress, 75 cameras, keycard access everywhere. None of that stopped the murder from happening. The cameras didn't even catch him leaving with the body because he likely never did leave with it until much later, if at all, or used an unmonitored route.
Right, the security failed in its primary purpose.
Utterly in preventing the violence. Instead, the entire conviction hinged on the tiny granular details left behind by Clark's panic and his desperate attempts to clean up. It was the meticulous log of his keycard, swiping 11 times into G22. It was the visual of him frantically scrubbing a drain that officers knew wasn't dirty. It was the flimsy lie about the cat scratches.
And the pen.
And ultimately, the undeniable physical proof of his DNA mixed with her blood on that green ink pen found right there underneath her body. In an age where we're overwhelmed with data, surveillance feeds, digital noise, this case boiled down to forensic truth. Meticulously gathered, scientifically analyzed, that provided the cold, hard certainty the cameras couldn't.
It's a truly terrifying reminder, isn't it? That even in the most controlled environments, human actions, human panic, and the microscopic traces we leave behind the DNA, the fibers, the residue will eventually tell the story. They reveal what happened behind those locked, supposedly secure doors.
Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.